Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Ladies and gentlemen, if I may have your attention, we're streaming now across the country. So, I'll be speaking with you y con nuestros amigos que nos están escuchando a través del internet. Bienvenidos de la gran ciudad y la costa de California. We're live in Monterey, California. I'm just the warm-up, guys. I am not the main act. That's coming up right after me. And you're going to have a wonderful opportunity to witness a first for LULAC. We are so proud that the League of United Latin American Citizens California Foundation, LULAC, once again steps up and says, "Sí se puede." Yes, we can. People ask, who will determine the fate of California? You will. The votes are in this room. Ustedes tienen el poder en sus manos. Can you imagine this? What are we? I checked it yesterday. It might have changed overnight. Are we still the sixth, or are we now the fifth largest economy in the world? The fourth? Oh my God, I must have overslept. Imagine that as we sleep, we have the power to change the economy of this country. People may say que Latinos, well, there's a lot of them, but they don't vote. What do you say to that? Do we vote? Yes. Do we vote? Yes. Do you care about what public officials and public policy is doing to your family? Mis amigos, desde San Diego, San Isidro, hasta Redding, California, desde la costa hasta lo que es la frontera ya con el estado de Nevada, nosotros en ese estado aquí, you are setting the pace for the rest of America. Do you know that? California is setting the pace. Let me tell you how. I come from the Republic of Texas. They think they're a different country. Now, LULAC is nonpartisan. But in Texas, they believe that they have the right to trample over civil rights and human rights. And they do it within the law. And when I say that to you, I'm not making it up, because you see, the law is being fashioned by people who are not inclusive of you. So they make it harder for you to vote. They call it election integrity. They don't want you to mail in a ballot. Now, the president mails in a ballot, but if you and I do it, oh no, somos chuecos. They don't want you to vote later in the evening, so ¿tienen horas de banquero para votar? You can only vote during banking hours. Give me a break. Mi gente is working in la bodega, they're working in the restaurantes, they're working at schools, they're working in many different professions. And they don't have the luxury always of pulling out their second or third car out of their garage, right? How many of us have lived in a one-car family? I know I have, ¿verdad? Y si tú te quedas con el coche, la familia no come. So when you have situations like that in Texas, tell me, which was the state that said, Texas, if you racially profile to gerrymander, we are going to do something different in our state? What state was it? Say it again. What state was it? You stepped up and you said, you want to play that game? Let's go, right? And you said, we're going to bring balance back into the election process. So this afternoon, as we watch this wonderful stage of distinguished candidates, you have an opportunity to hear the questions. I'm sure that you'll be able to submit more. And make sure that they're answering your questions. Que respondan a sus preguntas. a la jovencita de Santa Ana, a los estudiantes que les mencioné from Seaside. I remember those conversations with you. They may be here in the room right now. Now, I thought we were starting right at 1:30. Can you tell me how we're running on the schedule, Mr. Producer? Okay. They tell me to keep stretching. All right. I do that all the time. Let me tell you, in one of the space shuttle programs, they told me, start when you see the capsule. Well, I didn't know it takes 40 minutes for the capsule to move from there to here, and so we talked for 40 minutes. Now you've got the honored special moderators about to be hosting and conducting this wonderful session. Ladies and gentlemen, aquí los presento, and guys, please more appropriately introduce yourselves. State Director and our distinguished moderator from Univision. ¿Sí?
N más Univision.
Ah, qué más, qué más. Los dejo en buenas manos. Have a good afternoon.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for your patience. The California LULAC Foundation welcomes N más Univision 14 Área de Bahía as our official media partner for the Governor's Forum 2026. We're broadcasting live from Monterey, California.
We have some music tonight.
So we're broadcasting live from Monterey, California. We bring together community leaders and stakeholders for a conversation that will shape our state's collective future. Next to me is Michelle Benitez, an Emmy Award-winning journalist and evening news anchor, editorial lead at N más Univision in San Francisco Bay Area. Welcome her, please. She has spent her career interviewing high-ranking officials and telling the stories of our community.
Well, thank you so much for everyone and for having me here tonight. I'm honored to be sitting next to Jacob Sandoval, the California State Director, President for LULAC. In addition to his work advocating for Latino civil rights, he's a small business owner and serves as the President of Santa Rita Union School District Board.
Today, we are joined by three candidates for governor, Javier Becerra, Betty Yee, and Antonio Villaraigosa. They are here to address the most pressing challenges facing our families, from housing and healthcare to immigration and education. Ladies and gentlemen, and our viewers joining us from across the globe, at LULAC, our mission is clear: to ensure our community has a permanent seat at the table. We are here to educate, to motivate, and to build an equitable future for every Californian. But we cannot do it alone. We need you. I want everyone in this room and everyone watching at home to take out your phones now. Scan the barcode on your screen, brought to you by our sponsor, Dr. Raul Ayala. When you scan this code, you aren't just opening a link. You are joining a movement. It will take you directly to our foundation's YouTube page. And I'm asking you to like, subscribe, and most importantly, share this broadcast with everyone in your network right now. We hold the power to shape our future. Together, we are here to change. We are the change we want to see. And now, as we prepare to hear from the candidates, let's go over the rules for today's forum.
That's right. Before we begin, here are the rules for today. To ensure fairness, every candidate will receive equal time. We will start with 3-minute opening remarks, followed by moderated questions, where each candidate has 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond. A 15-second warning will be provided before your time expires. And later, each candidate will have 6 minutes individual spotlight to connect directly with you, the voters. This is your opportunity to see where these leaders stand, and the forum begins now.
Javier Becerra was the 45th U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services and the first Latino to hold the role. A Sacramento native and the first in his family to graduate college and become a lawyer. Becerra began his career advocating for individuals with mental illness. He served 12 terms in Congress, helping pass the Affordable Care Act and protect Social Security and Medicare. As California Attorney General, he defended DACA and the ACA in the Supreme Court and held corporations accountable. At HHS, he led the nation's COVID response, expanded healthcare coverage to a record high, with more than 300 million Americans possessing their own health insurance and launching historic prescription drug price negotiations. Javier is married to Dr. Carolina Reyes, a maternal fetal medicine specialist and professor of medicine at UC Davis Medical Center.
We would like to welcome candidate Javier Becerra.
Betty Yee is a proven leader and champion for working families. She served as California's controller from 2015 to 2023. 2018, she earned over 8 million votes, the highest of any candidate in California history. As the state's chief fiscal officer, she oversaw the finances of the world's 5th largest economy, uncovering $7.5 billion in misspending and strengthening transparency and accountability. Yee chaired the Franchise Tax Board and served on the boards of CalPERS and CalSTRS, helping guide more than $800 billion in public pension investments while advancing responsible, sustainable policies. With over 40 years of public service, she has led to initiatives on tax fairness, economic opportunity, and good governance. The daughter of immigrants, Yee remains committed to building a more equitable and inclusive California.
We would like to welcome candidate Betty Yee.
Thank you.
Former California State Speaker and Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa has built a career as a proven problem solver. In Sacramento, he worked with Democrats and Republicans to balance state budgets, investing in schools and public safety, providing tax cuts and tax relief for Californians, while creating a $13 billion budget surplus to prevent cuts to vital services. As the 31st mayor of Los Angeles, Villaraigosa presided over a historic expansion of public transportation, building more light rail than any other city in America. He cut violent crime by 48%, turned around failing schools, and led the city's economic recovery out of the recession. He also delivered billions in federal investment and hundreds of thousands of jobs as a leader of American Fast Forward for this Southland. Villaraigosa has served as California's infrastructure advisor, working with local, state, and federal leaders to identify priority projects and maximize access to federal funding across all regions of the state.
Now we would like to welcome candidate Antonio Villaraigosa.
Thank you. Let's begin with each candidate's opening statement. First, we'll begin with Javier Becerra.
Jacob and Michelle, thank you very much. To LULAC and all the young LULACers that are out there, thank you for being here and for changing the shape of our great state of California. We look forward to seeing you as the leaders who will be standing here in the future. I am the son of immigrants from Mexico. I grew up in the home that my father built with his hands. I am the first in my family to have an opportunity to attend a university. And I am the first one who can say to you that I am born and bred and raised in California and have an opportunity to lead you and all of our families out of this man-made crisis that has been started in Washington, D.C., and to get us out of this cost of living crisis that is making it tough for all of our families to move forward. The way we do that is by having someone who knows how to govern and lead. And in a time of crisis, the last thing you need is someone who needs on-the-job training the day they enter the office of the governor. We need someone who doesn't need training wheels and knows how to do this work. Someone who actually has balanced a budget larger than the state of California. I'm the only candidate who can say that. My budget at HHS was 5 times larger than the budget of the state of California. You need a governor who knows how to work through a crisis. I'm the only candidate who can tell you that I've actually declared a national emergency during time of COVID, during time of avian flu, monkeypox. I have had to deploy resources and personnel to respond to these crises. As your governor, I will defend you as I defended you as Attorney General. When DACA was in jeopardy because Trump tried to cut it the first time, I defended DACA all the way to the Supreme Court, and we defeated Donald Trump. When Donald Trump tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, I was the Attorney General who took him all the way to the Supreme Court, and today the Affordable Care Act survives because we beat Donald Trump in the Supreme Court. As your governor, I promise my goal will be to fight and win for the hardest working and the lowest paid, like my parents. I will fight and win for the next generation of Californians, like all the young people I see here who have to be able to do what my parents without a college education were able to do. Buy a home, raise their kids, send them to college or the military, and then retire not in Idaho or Arizona, but here in California. That's what I fight for. That's why I wish to be your governor. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Betty Yee, your opening statement?
Great, thank you. Buenas tardes a todos. My name is Betty Yee, and I am a native Californian, first-generation Californian, born to immigrant parents from China. You know, my story is probably like a lot of stories in this room. I grew up just not learning English until I entered kindergarten. I went to public schools. I shared a bedroom with my siblings, and I was one of the best employees for my parents' business, small business, laundry and dry cleaning business. But what it taught me was that nothing is given to us. We have to fight. We have to fight. And when we do fight, it means that we build community together. And I am just so fortunate to be standing here that within one generation that my parents can see their daughter be a candidate to be the next governor of California. You know, you're going to hear a lot about the fact that California is the 4th largest economy in the world. But what does that really mean when there are so many families who are struggling? And what our job is, and what the job of the next governor will be, is how do we build California where this can be the home for each of us, for our families, and where we can aspire to know that we are not going to be left behind, and that the generations to come are going to be successful. You know, there are many young people in this room, and I'm inspired by LULAC to be, that you have gotten so many young people here today, because we do this work for you. We do it for you because a sign of a mature society and of the values that we have as a democracy is to be sure that we are inclusive and that we are taking care of those who are most in need. And as I stand here as a candidate, I will tell you that I'm using my fiscal and financial experience, my statewide executive experience, to be sure that we are going to make California add up for all of us. We're going to have some tough budgets coming forward, and yes, we're not going to be able to cut our way out of it, nor tax our way out of it, but you know what we can do? We invest in our people so we grow our economy, so we can do business with any part of the world, as a large 4th largest economy should be able to do. So this is about you, it's about investing in you, and really fulfilling the promise of what it means to be a global economy where it rests on the health of each and every one of us. So I am happy to be standing up here, and just to say to all of you, we do this work for you. Thank you for being here, and but I hope we will be able to just share with you is that there are only 3 of us here among all the candidates. We care a lot about this community. You know, who shows up really matters. And so I'm just really thrilled to be here with Javier, with Antonio, because we understand the strength of our immigrant communities. We understand that the majority of California is what we have to invest in now so that we know that our future will continue to be bright. Thank you so much. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Antonio Villagrosa, your comments?
Buenas tardes. It's great to be here with you. I first got involved with the farm worker boycott when I was 15 years old. I led the walkouts in our high school, the blowouts that some of you may remember in the 1960s. I've stood up for immigrants my entire life. En esos tiempos ni podía hablar ni una palabra de español, porque soy hijo de inmigrante, pero mi mamá decidió hablar inglés cuando nos dejó de 5 años. Pero entendía algo, que tenía que luchar. I have fought my entire life. I've been in the civil rights movement for 25 years before I got elected to the state assembly. I was a labor leader at 25 years old, working at the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, enforcing our civil rights laws. I was president of the ACLU. I was majority whip, majority leader, and speaker of the California State Assembly. And I knew que el papel de primero no es golpear tu pecho y decir, soy tan único, soy especial. El papel de primero es abrir la puerta para los demás. And later I became the mayor of the largest city in this state, a governmental entity, frankly, that's as close to being governor as there is, because LA's bigger than 42 states. And I wasn't just a mayor. Crime went down nearly 50% with constitutional community policing, expanding after-school programs, and summer youth jobs. Graduation rates went up 60%. We went from 1 out of 3 failing schools to 1 out of 10. Built more infrastructure than anybody in the United States of America, and we've got to build again, housing and infrastructure. And finally, #1 American city in reducing greenhouse gases. I've got a record, everybody. Mucha gente hablan muy bien. Y como dijo Betty, no vinieron. Los que están presentes están aquí porque entendemos que esta comunidad es importante y esta organización es importante. So I'd be honored to have your support, and I'm proud to be here with my colleagues who did show up today.
Okay. Thank you all for your opening remarks. We're going to move to the question portion. Each of you will have 90 seconds for each of your answers.
Okay, so we're going to start with the first question. In California, significant wage gaps persist. Latino workers earn less than their non-Latino peers, even with the same level of education. And Latinas face the lowest wages of any group. What specific policies would your administration implement to close these wage gaps?
Start off with Javier Becerra, please.
I said it at the beginning. Yo lo dije muy bien al empezar. The hardest working and lowest paid. That's what my governorship will be about, is rewarding those who always work hard, never ask for a lot. Why is that so important to me? That was Manuel and Maria Teresa Becerra, my parents. That's all they did. Construction worker, a secretary, they knew they had to work hard. They knew that they couldn't afford childcare, so when we came home from school, neither of them was there. We were what are called latchkey kids. We had to take care of ourselves until they came home. But we knew what we could and couldn't do. And we knew they were working hard. We're going to make sure that if you work in California, you make a living wage. If you work in California, you have access to health care. You work in California, your kids will have access to good schools. You work in California, you will have a roof over your head. We will protect that because that's how we lift up our state of California. In the 1950s, after World War II, the government gave awards, premió, all those GIs that came back from the war. It gave them a GI Bill, a chance to educate themselves in college, start working. We then created the largest middle class the United States has ever seen. We have to do the same thing. We have to reward those who work hard every day, whether it's in the fields, whether it's in the assembly line, or whether it's in that new tech company. You deserve to know that you have what it takes to grow your economy and grow the family into a prosperous and very successful family. So I'm going to fight for that. Hardest working, the lowest paid, they're going to be protected under my watch.
Thank you. Thank you. Betty.
Thank you. Well, first, I think the specific policy is we've got to close this gap by paying people equally for the same experience, for the same job. And if dollars are an issue, then we look at what else we need to do to really support these workers. You know, when I think about where we are in California, we have a growing wealth gap in California. No surprise. It's hurting our black and brown communities the hardest. And it's also starting to encroach upon the middle class. And so what do we do about that? Our job is to be sure that we are continuing to build opportunities for jobs that pay more. People need to earn more. Or we can look at how we relieve some of the cost pressures that families are under, looking at how we make healthcare more affordable, childcare more affordable. And so we can't make it up in wages. We need to think about how we reduce some of the burdens of the cost of care. And look, I'm a caregiver for my 103-year-old mother, and I can say that is work. That should be valued as work. And so first, we close the gap. Secondly, we've got to recognize all the other pressures that are on workers and see whether we can also relieve some of those pressures as well. So we have a lot of work to do, but the state of California should be the model for how we do it because these gaps also persist in state government.
Okay. Thank you. Tony Villalobos.
Like Betty, I believe in equal pay for equal work. The ERA was not supported by many states. It was supported here. I believe in it. We've got to fight for it. But even though women historically don't get paid as much as men, women of color, Latinas and African Americans, get paid even less. And we need to stand up, and I know all the three of us do, stand up for the notion that that's got to change in the state of California. But we also got to do other things. We've got to educate our kids. I mentioned, you know, record means something, everybody. 1 out of 3 schools were failing. I took on the most powerful interests in LA that were defending the fact that our schools were failing our kids, and 80% of LA Unified is Latino. More than 50% of my staff was Latina and Latino. And 70% were of color. We've got to hire our own. We've got to support our small businesses. We've got to make sure we recycle our dollars. We know that historically that's what happens. And that's why it is important that we show up here, that we share with you a record. And I could tell you, if you look at the record, it's second to none. I have fought my whole life for Latinas, Latinos, people of color, the poor, since I was a kid. And I'll continue to do that. And that's why we're here, because the young people here, this is about you, about your future, about being able to buy a home at the end of the rainbow, about having a college you can afford, about having the skill set you can employ to improve your lives.
Thank you. Many immigrants start businesses that contribute to the economy. What would you do to support immigrant entrepreneurs and reduce barriers to starting a business? We'll start off with Javier Becerra, please.
Don't we move? I thought we moved down so that I don't always.
Okay, sure. What was Antonio Veros? That's fair.
Or Betty.
Second, and then, yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
good.
okay. That's
Great.
fine.
Thank you.
Thank you for being flexible, too.
Yeah, we've done this many times before.
Yeah, the way they usually do it is after the first person goes, and they go, the next
Go to the next
person goes
person.
For the next
first,
question,
and the
yeah.
third person
Keep
goes first.
rotating.
Okay, appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.
Where we all have a chance to go first.
Yeah.
That's right. All right, thank you. So this question is very personal to me because of my family business. Look, immigrants are now the community that is starting up most small businesses in California. And it is the one way that we can get a foothold into our economy. And the barriers that we have to do that, I mentioned my 103-year-old mother. I still see her try to see her about once a week. And she says to me, Betty, if your dad and I had to start a business today, we'd have never made it. We'd have never made it. All the requirements we have to navigate, all the paperwork that we have to produce. And so I would have actually, for entrepreneurs in the immigrant communities, I would have navigators really help entrepreneurs really just understand what their requirements are in terms of state requirements with regard to taxes, licensing, all of that. I also would look at financial assistance to help small businesses get started. And particularly if they're starting and then growing, we don't want them to leave the state as they're growing because things are getting more expensive here. We want them to stay here. So we want to help them grow. So this is about an investment in small businesses. It's about an investment in our immigrant community because we know the future entrepreneurs, the future inventors, the future innovators come from these very immigrant communities. And so we have to invest in that. That is our future. And our job is to remove those barriers from a cost perspective, from a regulation perspective, and certainly from the perspective of being sure that when you are going to grow your business here, we want you to stay here and be sure that your families are able to see California as a home for the future.
Okay. Thank you.
I know you know this. Latina-owned businesses are the fastest growing businesses in the United States of America. And Latino-owned businesses overall, both Latinas and Latinos, on a per capita basis, are starting businesses more than any other ethnic group, including people that trace their origins to Europe. I'm proud to say that I got the endorsement of the Latin Business Association, and many of the people in LA, and many of the people in that organization are immigrants. And we've got to stand up for them. But you know, I keep on saying, because I think record matters. When I was mayor of the biggest city in this state, I did the Minority Business Opportunity Center. We were 33rd in the country when I took over as mayor. When I was ended, we were #1. We did a local preference hiring program because you know we have Proposition 209 and it doesn't let you target specific ethnic groups. So we did creative things. We said businesses that are in LA, or disproportionately a lot of them of color and that are small, we did a small business where we focused on communities of color. And then we did even more than that. We said all those businesses, we got to help them. We got to help them get access to capital. We got to help them get opportunities to learn how to contract with cities and the like. And then in construction, I saw that back then, we were building more than anyone in the country, and I saw that almost all the people on the construction sites didn't look like any of us.
Sorry.
So you know what I did? Local hire. Had to hire locally. And now almost all those trades are people of color. Well, a Latino. Almost all those trades. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have to start where I began with my opening remarks, and the man-made disasters coming from Washington, D.C. I don't know how many of you have heard, but the Trump administration has just now eliminated access to Small Business Administration loans to people who are here legally, have status, and qualified for those SBA loans. This administration has now denied them ability to have that infusion of cash. And as many of you know, if you want to start a small business, you need capital. If you don't have capital, it's hard to start your business. Many, many, many small businesses, especially businesses of color, women-owned businesses, they get their start because they're able to access an SBA loan, very low interest rate. Now that's gone. Not for everybody, only if you're a legal resident. That's the sin that we see the Trump administration committing every day. And that's what we have to stop. What else will I do? Aside from kicking Trump to the side and not letting him do that to us, I will institutionalize one-stop shopping. You need to get a permit here, a license there. You don't have to go to 2, 3, 4 different agencies. One place. You get all of your permits, all of your license, so you don't have to keep shopping all over the place. ¿Qué más? Small business literacy. We have to teach our communities how to start a business, what it means, how you start your accounting. We want them to know that. We want to cut the red tape as much as we can, and we want to give people equal opportunity. No one should be denied a loan because they look like us. If you work hard, if you got a great idea, you should be able to do it. That's how I'll fight for small businesses in California.
$1.55 million children live with undocumented parents, creating widespread anxiety about families being torn apart. What specific actions would you take to protect these families and reduce that fear, and how would you implement them with California's legal limits?
Antonio.
Well, first of all, nunca en mi vida, y he trabajado luchando para el inmigrante desde 15 años, nunca en mi vida he visto agentes de la migra vestido de la cabeza a los pies como el Ku Klux Klan, escondidos, sin identificación. I've said you got to identify yourself. I have an ICE plan that says you're in this state, we got to know who you are. You can't come in, dressed like that and think you could deport our folks and brutally beat them. I've said as well in my ICE plan, you can't come into schools, You can't come into courthouses. You can't come into hospitals. You can't come in places of business. And you can't come in homes without a warrant. I've said as well, when you've been beaten up and killed the way some people have, legal residents and citizens arrested, you got to be held accountable. We're going to investigate all violent acts by ICE agents in my plan. And then detention centers. We got people now, 25 people, I think the number is, 25 people that have died in these detention centers. We probably don't have 25 people in all the prisons in that period of time. That's unacceptable. So what I've said in our state, we've got to enforce health and safety laws for children, education, health care, safety, all of that, and I will, and it's in my ICE plan.
Thank you. Javier Becerra.
Dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres. I know with whom I walk because I've been there all my life. And I will stand with those families that work very hard. As I said, in my California as governor, we're going to reward people who work hard. The people that ICE is picking up aren't the criminals. They're the people who are working hard.
That's right.
They're working even though they know if they're outdoors, they may get pursued by ICE. They still go work. That's how hard it is that they work. I am going to protect them porque yo sé con quién ando. Second, when it came time to protect our status, saying we're not going to participate with ICE in raids, we have a law, SB 54, the Values Act. That was enacted while I was Attorney General. The Trump administration sued because they didn't like that law. I defended that in court, and we beat Donald Trump. That's why the ICE immigration police weren't doing what they're now doing before, because we stopped them. We will investigate the ICE police. We will prosecute the ICE police, and we will convict the ICE police if they violate our laws. That's simple and straightforward. And the final thing I'll say to you is that your schools, your hospitals, our courthouses, they are off limit. We will make sure that we have laws that protect those spaces from intrusion. And we will work hard to make sure our families know that they have rights, and we will protect them, because this is California. This isn't Washington, D.C. We're not taking a knee to Donald Trump. I beat him when I was Attorney General before. I had to take him to court, go toe-to-toe with him more than 120 times, and we won most of those times. We'll do it again.
Thank you. Betty.
Well, let me just say I agree with both Antonio and Javier that we're talking about California's legal authority, which means that ICE has to follow our laws. And so when there is any attempt to separate families, to terrorize our communities, to be in our schools, to be in our hospitals, we take action. They have no right to do that. They have no right to do that. But I want to back up and say why this is happening. It's happening because California's immigrant communities are vulnerable. And this Trump administration knows if it comes after our immigrants, it's going to make the rest of the state vulnerable. Because I have to wake up and say, or so many people have to wake up and say, well, it's immigrants today, who next? And it's about really building our economy and economic resistance in our immigrant communities so that we can strengthen you. We can be sure that you can have access to services within your own communities so that people don't have to be in fear of going to access services. It's going to be how we strengthen our communities. And when I talked about at the beginning, we're investing in you, this is what the next governor has to do. Because the vulnerability is why we have a red circle in the Trump administration that California is a target. And when we don't have an economic base and of strength upon which to stand, that's why they're coming after us. And so what I am going to say about SB 54 that Javier mentioned is we need to lean in even more about that. Because a sanctuary state isn't just about not cooperating with federal officials. It's about what we do to continue to strengthen our communities so that the federal officials understand they have to follow our laws.
Okay, thank you. So just for logistic purposes, Michelle will give you guys a 30 seconds when there's left. She's over there in the front.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But you guys have been awesome and amazing.
Okay.
I've kind of got out time.
Yeah, because I didn't know where it was.
Yeah. Will you support universal access to legal representation for immigrants facing detention or deportation in California? Javier Becerra.
And is this the 90-second as well? So yes, but now let me use the rest of my time and explain why. Because we want to make sure our families understand their rights. Too many of our families work really hard. I remember when my parents were working, they didn't worry so much about the laws. They knew they just had to earn money because they didn't have much. They came to this country with $12 in their pocket. So they knew they just had to work hard all the time. We need to make sure our families understand the law. But when something happens, we don't just expect them to know it. We want to be there to help them. And so absolutely, we provide the services. Because if that person gets detained unlawfully, guess what? They can't work. They can't help build my state of California. I need them working. It is an investment for California to defend those families because they're working and building my state. They're not just hanging around. They're working. And so I see them as an asset to my state. That's why I will fight for them. But I also fight for them because I come from them. I know what they do. I know how hard they try. I know how much they don't want to break the law. I know how much these families every day will do anything to not break a promise, to not take out a loan and never pay it back. They will pay even if they can't put food on the table because they know their word is their bond. They have to do better than the rest. And so we will fight for these families, not just because morally it's the right thing, but because economically we have to protect those who work hard for California.
Thank you. Betty.
Yes, and I will also use my time to say, everywhere that I've gone in California during this campaign, I have asked audiences, how many of you have taken your Know Your Rights training? And I'm going to ask you, how many of you here have taken a Know Your Rights training? Okay. I want all hands to be up, and I'll tell you why. Because this is one of the best ways we can protect our immigrants. We're right in the communities. We ought to be right there with our rapid response networks, really understanding, what their rights are, to know that they have legal rights right then and there. But yes, in terms of universal access to legal representation, you know what else I would do? I would get the employers of California to step up, because this is what's going to hurt their bottom line. If our immigrant communities aren't respected all the way through in terms of being rightful members of our communities, being those who are contributing to our economy, and yet employers still aren't stepping up enough to say that they really help our bottom line. This is what we need, is just an all-of-community effort to stand up against this Trump administration. But why I ask everybody to take a Know Your Rights training is because this Trump administration is not stopping with immigrant rights. Because pretty soon we may all need to be taking a Know Your Voting Rights training. They're coming after it all. So that's the foundation of our democracy. But with respect to universal access to legal representation, yes, yes, yes.
Thank you. Antonio Villaraigosa.
Again, when I was mayor, long before these raids, that's what LA was doing. We were putting money in immigrant rights organizations to teach people know your rights. I told you I came out of the movement at 15 years old. We were doing know your rights training back then for immigrants. And today, the state is providing money to those immigrant rights groups. And when I'm governor, we'll provide even more. We've got to stand up for the notion that this is a nation of laws, that we have constitutional rights, that there's a Bill of Rights that protect your freedom of speech, your freedom to demonstrate, and very importantly, to defend our civil rights and our civil liberties. So yes, I will do that. According to UC Merced and the Bay Area Institute, if we were to deport all of the undocumented in this state, it's a $274 billion hit to the California economy. Esta gente es tan loca. When you talk about hospitality, service, farming, construction, we're the people that do the work. It's our folks, and we will fight for them.
How will you ensure equitable funding and resources for our public schools and all students have access to quality education?
Betty.
Okay. When I look at our public schools today, we hear a lot about the achievement gap that we're trying to close. And one of the things that I don't think we do well in our public education system is really understanding what the experiences of our students and learners are, and particularly in immigrant communities. You know, there are many young people who are taking on very adult responsibilities in family situations. And so to not be able to understand that and to know that there's a lot of pressure and stress on these learners and that those needs are real needs because that's how families survive, needs to be recognized in our schools. And so when I think about equitable funding, it's really looking at those students that have the highest needs. Doesn't mean they're the low achievers, but they have high needs because they already are doing so much. And so this is where we want to be sure that we are addressing that population of students. We want to be sure that they are achieving at their grade levels. And we also want to know that, that we are investing in them in terms of being sure that in terms of their access to higher education, that they're getting exposure to higher education, the higher education experience as early as possible. I am a big, big supporter of dual enrollment. You know, where our community colleges in California are really opening their doors to our high school students early on to give them the experience about what it means to take on college coursework. And not only that, but finally exposing them to the actual job opportunities that are going to be there when they graduate. And so this relationship has to start early. This investment has to start early. And we also know that when we talk about equitable funding, it means that we have to just recognize at the very outset, students have very different ways of learning. And so what is successful needs to be funded.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Antonio Villaraigosa.
Again, I think it's important. Got a record. LA is the biggest school district in the country. It's 80% Latino. 1 out of 3 schools are failing. We had a 44% graduation rate, but in the areas, in Latino and Black areas, it was 36%. By the time I left, a 60% increase in the graduation rate. What I say, and I'm with you, Betty, we got to focus on the hardest to reach kids, and those are our kids. They're English language learners and African American young boys. And we've got to focus like a laser beam on them. Any teachers in the room? To the teachers, you know the LCFF, the local control funding formula. We got to get behind the notion that you start with the kids that need the help the most, the kids that are, you know, behind. We're #1 in teacher pay. We're 21st in per pupil spending. We're in the mid-30s in reading and math in the 4th grade, behind Mississippi, and most of those kids look like us. And we're dead last in graduation. So focus on the kids that need the help the most. I got a record doing that. When I was Speaker of the Assembly, balanced 2 budgets with a surplus and put more money in education than in Prop 98 than we had before or since. Yes, we need history in our textbook también. We got to learn about our contributions to this great state and this great country.
Thank you. Javier Becerra.
So to the teachers who are here, I would pose the question, are you able to afford to buy a home by the school where you teach? More often than not, the answer is no. And the result is that we have teachers who have to drive a long distance to go educate these children. We have teachers that are staying long hours. They're burning out. Too often a teacher goes in with such enthusiasm, but within 3 or 5 years they say, I can't handle this anymore. And they leave. And then we have to start again. And who gets all the new teachers who don't have the experience and the great talent that you get after 3 or 5 years? All the schools that need the most help.
That's right.
And so we have to push to make it so that people want to be teachers. We have, if a teacher is there to educate the next scientist and doctor and lawyer, we should pay them like a scientist, a doctor, and a lawyer. Don't do it on the cheap. Secondly, preschool. We can't expect a child to be ready to learn once they get to kindergarten, 1st grade, if they never had real opportunities when they were back home to learn enough. Some of these families are very low income. We have to give them access to preschool so that they can learn and be ready by the time they're hitting kindergarten. Third, lower class size. No more having 34 little kids in a classroom with a teacher, because how do you expect them to teach? Fourth, hey, how about when they're ready to go to college, we don't burden them with tuition that's so high they can't go. Tuition-free college when they start to go to college. And then finally, let us protect Prop 98 funding. Don't let them try to strip it out and use it for other things. It's got to be used in the classroom. That's why we voted for Prop 98, to have the money for teachers and kids in the classroom.
Thank you very much. What policies will you pursue to make higher education, career training, and workforce development more affordable and accessible? Antonio Villaraigosa, please.
LA put more money in workforce training than any city in the country. We got awards for it. We were focused on skilled training, put 274,000 people in living wage jobs. We've got to focus, as I said, on career technical education. AI is going to, hurt a lot of jobs. But the people, and I just left the building trades earlier today in Watsonville, and I can tell you, those people, those jobs aren't going to go away. So we got to focus on that. I agree. We've got to make dual enrollment, last 2 years of high school and community college, save 2 years on college education. The CSUs need to be free. I also agree, like my colleagues, that we've got to make pre-kindergarten critical, because early child education is essential. And again, I got a record doing that. And I did it in the biggest city in the state. And I understand when you talk about the kids that are left behind, we're talking about our kids, and we got to fight for them.
Thank you. Javier Becerra.
So when I was Secretary of Health and Human Services, we had a program called the Public Health Service Corps. The Public Health Service Corps is a program that allows someone who wants to be a doctor or a nurse to go through their medical education, and we, the taxpayers, will pay for it. They then have to commit to 4 to 5 years of service in an underserved area. My son-in-law, Ivan Marquez, Dr. Marquez, works at Natividad in Salinas. He got his 4 years of medical school paid for. Today, he is a pediatrician serving mostly farm worker families at Natividad. And he is doing it in English and in Spanish. I expanded that program to include up to 20,000 Corps members. We're going to do the same thing in California. Give you a chance to get educated. We'll pay for your education. You give us service in the areas where you're needed the most. Secondly, we're going to make sure we have a partnership between the industries that have the jobs and our K-12 schools. We want to make sure we're teaching to the jobs of tomorrow. We don't want you to get an education and not be able to find a job. Let's figure out where the healthcare, internet, whatever it is, let's go to make sure our kids are learning so when they graduate from high school, then they graduate from college, they actually can get a job that pays them well. Teach to tomorrow's jobs. And the final thing I'll say is this, having come from a father who was a construction worker, my too being a construction worker with the laborers union, apprenticeships. Let's train with apprenticeships, because not everybody needs to go to college to make a decent living. Labor, works, support apprenticeship.
Betty.
Thank you. Let me start there. Apprenticeships, not just for the trades, but across all different kinds of professions. The whole concept of earning while learning is a powerful one and really can help with respect to affordability and access. So I agree with everything that's been said, but let me just add one other thing. For so much of the time that we think about how we make education more affordable and accessible, we think about the institutions that we have in place now. And I think a lot about what would happen if we actually brought those institutions into the communities that don't have access right now, and really growing our workforce within the communities where we need to look at growing the economy. As your governor, that is going to be a huge focus of mine, because when we have shortages in healthcare, when we have shortages in many of our industries that are coming up in innovation and technology, we should not be importing that expertise into communities. We should be growing it right in the communities that are going to see, hopefully, jobs develop for our young people. They have opportunities for economic mobility. When I talked about the growing wealth gaps, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Growing jobs that are going to pay a stable living wage so that people can earn more, but right in the communities where we have the needs. And so that is going to be an investment in terms of the communities, but we are going to use our institutions more flexibly. Meet the learners where they are. Meet them where they are. which is why community colleges is so precious, because we have them in almost every place in California. We need to uplift that. And I'm also a proponent of community colleges granting 4-year degrees. This has to happen in terms of access and cost, and I think if we're able to do that, we're going to see a lot more economic opportunity developed all throughout the state.
Thank you.
Okay, before we moving into the candidate spotlight segment, what's your final message would you like to share with the California's Hispanic community?
Javier Becerra?
And 90 seconds as well.
Yeah, 96 as well.
So I have taken on a reckless federal government when I was Attorney General. I have taken on ruthless corporations when I sued them. I've defended workers' wages, women's health, immigrants' rights as your Attorney General. I have launched civil rights investigations. I launched the program called 988, the Suicide Prevention and Mental Health Lifeline that people can today call like 911, but 988. We launched that while I was secretary. I've taken down sex trafficking rings. I have taken down organized crime operations. I have taken down those kinds of criminal activities like sex trafficking in a case of a man named Nason Joaquin Garcia, who was a religious leader who was abusing of children. And we took him to court. He is now in jail because of the sex crimes that he had committed. I said it earlier, I am not the richest candidate in this race, and I'm not the slickest candidate in this race, but I am the one with the most experience that leads you to understand how to run a very large government operation like the state of California, balancing budgets, being able to deal with economic crises, and knowing how to get out of there, and knowing how to take on the big menaces like Donald Trump, not just fighting, but winning. I intend to do that for that hardest worker, that lowest paid Californian. I intend to do it because I know where I come from. Yo sé de dónde vine, yo sé con quién ando.
Thank you. Betty?
I stand here proudly as a daughter of immigrants, and what I just want to say to California's Hispanic community is thank you. Thank you because you are helping to build this bright future for California. And our job, the next governor's job, is to be sure that we invest in you, to be sure that these opportunities are there for you and your families to succeed and thrive. And as I mentioned earlier at the outset, you know, growing up as a daughter of immigrants, everything is a fight. Nothing is given. And that's really the sign of a maturing society, is when we can say the next generation is better off than how we did. And that is my promise to you. It will be better off. I am the candidate who has had statewide experience. I've been your state controller. I've been a statewide executive, watching over the finances for California. I've been a state budget director, writing and balancing budgets to be sure we're delivering for our diverse communities. And I've also sat on the Board of Equalization, helping small businesses get started and to stay in business. And here's what I just want to end with. I've been an underdog all my life. People don't take us seriously because of what we look like. And I will say, part of being an underdog is that it compels us to work harder. And I've exceeded expectations all my life. I'm an underdog in this race, but I don't have any gimmicks, I don't swear, I have experience and integrity. And I'm going to exceed expectations to become your next governor of California. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Antonio Villaraigosa?
I want to start by acknowledging my colleagues. We showed up. Showing up matters. Showing up matters. And yes, experience matters, but so does record, because you could have experience and not have a record. And I could tell you, I have a record second to none. Remember, when I was speaker, we were a purple state. Actually, we were just coming out of being a red state. I led the fight on 187 in my area of town. I took on 3 Strikes, You're Out. I authored Healthy Families, millions of kids, 69% of them Latinos got health care. I authored the toughest assault weapons ban in the nation. And when I was mayor, as I said, we have a record of accomplishment. But one of the things that was really important is when I saw us in the middle of a recession, I focused on apprenticeship programs, put 200,000 people plus, and the vast majority of them were Latino. I knew what my job was. This organization is important, and that's why I think the three of us showed up. I've been working with this organization since I was a kid. This organization, the GI Forum, the National Council of La Raza, which became Unidos. I've been working with civil rights organizations my entire life, and when I'm governor, I will work with this organization as well. I'd be honored to have your support.
Thank you all. Now we're going to move to our individual spotlight segment. This time is exclusively for each candidate to connect directly with our viewers without interruptions. Each candidate, because of time, will receive 5 minutes with a series of questions we'll ask them.
Okay, now let's move on to Javier Becerra's spotlight questions. You have 6 minutes to answer these questions. The first one,
I'm sorry, it's 5 minutes.
5 minutes, I'm sorry. With a lot of candidates running for governor, we're coming to the point that voters will be deciding soon on who to vote for. What makes you different from the rest of the field of candidates?
Michelle, I will say to you that the fourth largest economy in the world needs someone who knows how to deal with those big players, those big dollars. When I became Secretary of Health and Human Services, hundreds of thousands of Americans were dying from COVID. The previous administration had done very little to protect our people from COVID. Remember the denials about the vaccines? Remember the president didn't even want to wear a mask? Remember how the president was the one that was undermining the work of the pediatricians and the scientists who were telling us we have to be careful how we relate to others because we could get sick. Remember how people were dying in the hospital by themselves because their family couldn't enter their hospital room because they might get infected? That's what I came into as the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services. President Biden gave me one direction: save lives, save lives. And we got to work. And we started to make sure the vaccines were available. I remember being AG and watching as so many farm workers were not able to go to those big clinics to get the vaccinations because they couldn't leave the fields. What did we do? We worked with the growers and the shippers, and we set up vaccination sites at the fields so the workers did not have to leave their job. And in Monterey County, if you can believe this, there was a point where more farm worker community members were vaccinated than average Monterey County residents. Nothing that ever happens where the farm workers were first to get in line. We made that possible because we made the vaccines available. That is what you need from a leader in a time of crisis, to know how to tackle that. When I was secretary, we were having budgets. My budget, as I said, was bigger than the state of California's. I had to balance my budget. I had to make some tough decisions on what we would save and not save. We made it happen, and I guarantee you, not a one of you can tell me where we made cuts, because we made sure we didn't cut into services that would go to you and your family, because we knew that was essential. When I was Attorney General of the state of California, I was sworn in a week after Donald Trump was sworn in to be president the first time. And right away, he started going after California. Remember the Muslim travel ban? We sued. That was my first lawsuit. We started there. Week after week after week, Donald Trump came after us, and we fought back, toe-to-toe. We stopped him from killing DACA. We stopped him from eliminating the Affordable Care Act. We stopped him from stopping our clean car standards. We stopped him when it came to a woman's right to have reproductive health care under the Affordable Care Act. We stopped him. Remember when he tried to deny the count of undocumented in the census? He wanted to eliminate undocumented in our national count of how many people were in the country by not letting the undocumented be part of the census. I took him to court. We beat him in that as well. We went after him over and over. We need a leader who knows how to take on a crisis. This is what we call a break glass moment, when we have to be out there and ready. And what I will tell you is this: pick wisely, because we're in crisis. When you can barely afford to live in the state of California, when you see Donald Trump violating the law with ICE and other ways, we need someone who's taken on these crises before and won. And I will tell you, I am ready. Everything I have done has prepared me. Congressman, Attorney General, Secretary of Health and Human Service, but the thing that prepared me most, working side by side with my father in road construction, using that jackhammer, helping my dad as he was getting older and I was still young to build those roads the way they needed to be built. I learned the hard way what it means to work hard. I know what it means to fight. I know what it means to win. And on my first days in office, here's what I will tell you I will do. If you have a home and you're paying home insurance, you're paying too much. I will freeze homeowner insurance rates. When I become governor, I will declare a state of emergency and say it is not fair that people are being asked to pay higher and higher prices and never explain. My mother has a home where for decades she's had the same insurance company. I don't think she's ever filed a claim on that house. Month after month, paid her premiums. It got canceled on her. And when she finally was able to find new insurance, it cost her more than twice as much as what she had. That is not right. I will also freeze what you pay in utilities, because how many people are paying a lot more today in their electricity and gas rates? We need to find out why these companies are charging us so much. Before they can raise any utility rate or insurance, home insurance premium, we want to find out what they're doing. If they can't justify it, no increases. We're going to make sure that we fight for people, the hardest working, the lowest paid. That is my commitment to you. That is why I hope you'll support me for governor. Muchas gracias.
As governor, what would you be the top priorities on your first day in office?
Well, I mentioned a couple of those things. Freeze those rates of utilities, freeze the rates of insurance premiums. I would also try to make sure that any project for housing that is ready to go, and there are estimates that are some 40,000 housing units that could be ready to go, ready to build, shoveled, go in the dirt, if we just had one little thing, probably a little bit of extra money to make it possible, maybe finish that one licensing requirement. Let's get them going. In that first 100 days, I will fight to get those 40,000 units shovel ready, shovel in ground, building. The next thing I'll do is, as I said to you, I'm protecting health care for everyone in California, including the undocumented. You will get your health care because it costs us more to make you wait because you don't have insurance. Instead of seeing your family doctor or a pediatrician, you wait till you go to the emergency room, the most expensive doors to walk through for your health care. And the final thing I'll say is this. For those of you who know people who faced wildfires and may have lost their homes, if even after a year you haven't received your payment from your insurance company, I will make sure in my first 100 days we get that done. There is no excuse for an insurance company that's been collecting your premiums for years and years and years not to pay you when you file your claim. We'll make sure that they do the right thing and provide for you the way you paid them.
With your long record and career, what are the top accomplishments you have had during your time in the public service?
Well, I already mentioned we went all the way to Supreme Court and defended the Affordable Care Act and won. We had defended DACA for Dreamers and won. I will tell you that being able to, as Secretary of Health and Human Services, ensure that no one had to pay for life-saving vaccines was so important to me because I remember those days when my family didn't have much, and if people had told us, you have to pay Manuel and Maria Teresa Becerra so that your kids could be vaccinated, they might have said, well, we'll wait a little while to see if we can afford it. No. We made sure that was possible. But I will tell you the most proud thing that I have done in more than 30 years of public service. Carolina Reyes, la doctora Carolina Reyes, my wife, says she still loves me. My three daughters, Clarissa Reyes Becerra, who lives in Salinas, I believe may even be in this room, she's right there, is an attorney. Clarissa, I'm going to speak for you and Olivia and Natalia and say that you all still love me too. And I will say this, my proudest accomplishment is my family has stayed intact. My family still acts like a family. We still love each other. We still work together. Even though I've taken them all over the place, even though I had to go back and forth, DC, California, constantly traveling, we figured out how to make it work. I give Carolina most of the credit because she was the glue. But what I will tell you is this, if you don't have your anchor at home, you cannot fly and launch in public service. You need to be anchored at home. I know I am anchored at home, and it's because of the 4 women that are in my family, and I thank them for that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Javier Becerra. Let's continue with Betty Yee's spotlight questions. What does character matter in electing our governor? Or why does character matter in electing our governor?
Okay. You know, we see a lot of public officials these days, and unfortunately, most headlines we read about them is about something they've done wrong. You know, public service to me is one of the highest honors in terms of the kind of work that we could all be doing. You know, from our educators all the way up to, hopefully one day, President of the United States, someone that we can respect. You know, character matters because it says to us how they're going to relate to all of you. And when I think about character, and the last few days have tested all of us in this race because we've had some character flaws among some of the candidates. And why it matters is this: we are in positions of power. And I think sometimes people mistake power to mean the position that they're holding. And so they get to exercise all kinds of things that they think they can do in those roles, whether you're running for office or whether you are actually in office. But power does not mean that you have the right to abuse or to harass or to sexually assault women. It does not mean that you have, frankly, those who abuse power should never be allowed to hold power. Period. Because it's about something much bigger than the office. It's about how we serve all of you. And power, frankly, is the job that we do to be sure that we're making your lives better. That's what power is. And so we still see in politics the mistaken perception about what power is. From both men and women, by the way. That it's about the position they hold, and because they are, just like our president, the king, believes that he can do whatever he thinks is within his authority. So character matters on the very first level because it's about respect. It's about respect for the office. It's about respect for the authority of the office to deliver, to make your lives better. Secondly, character is about how we understand the difference between right and wrong. It means that we know that we are an example and a model that people look to in terms of how we make decisions and understand what is morally and ethically right and wrong. And thirdly, with respect to character, it's about really where we each come from. It's about our values. How were our values shaped? As I mentioned earlier at the outset, you know, I'm a daughter of immigrants. I ran for controller because, you know what, I did the books for my family's business and I got to take care of the books for the state of California. And that was my training, but why that is important to me? Because when we're able to do that well, it means we can deliver more for our communities in California. And so I just want to name this, and I'm happy for the question because you're going to see a lot more written about this during this race, and frankly in all the races and in the 2028 presidential election. But make no mistake, each of you here hold the power. And it is incumbent upon each of you to hold us accountable to be sure that we are delivering for you.
Describe your state level experience and why they should matter for voters.
You know, when I began my career in state government, there were very few people who looked like me. My public service career began right here in Santa Cruz County during the 1980s, during the height of the HIV/AIDS crisis. I was appointed to the County Public Health Commission, and then immediately was asked to go to Sacramento to try to lobby for more county public health dollars. And just like the COVID-19 pandemic, we didn't know a lot about HIV then. So a lot of it was for outreach and education, particularly for our non-English speaking communities and for our low-income communities. I went to Sacramento and I was just appalled at what I saw. The staff, senior staff who were advising our legislators, none of them looked like me. They were what we called stale, pale, and male. And I thought, how can that be? How can they understand what is happening in our communities when their whole life experience is so different? It's so different. So we were able to get some public health dollars back to Santa Cruz County. We did our outreach and education, and I was very proud of Santa Cruz County because we did a lot of things that a lot of counties didn't do because we just felt like we didn't know a lot, but all we knew how to do was to keep people healthy and safe. And so I ended up going back to Sacramento on a Senate fellowship and really made my career there. Because not only when I did the books for my family business, did I understand how money drives everything, but going to Sacramento to understand that if you know something about the state budget, if you know how to influence those decisions, if you can be in a position of where you can decide how to allocate dollars, that is a great place to be because we want those dollars to make a difference in people's lives. And so my statewide experience has been about my fiscal and financial experience. It's been about my executive experience running a department, a state controller's office, 1,400 strong, but we had oversight over all of the state agencies and departments around their financial statements and financial condition. But this matters because people need to have trust in how California is governed. If our financial position is not intact, people are not going to invest in us, and people are not going to look at us seriously as being a large global economy. And so all of this matters because when you have statewide executive experience, it's about the 280,000 state workers who are going to be the people executing the programs to improve the lives for all Californians.
Okay. With all of California's challenges, what keeps you hopeful?
Well, all of you. You're here. You're here. And many of you have been here year after year and have been devoted to LULAC and to your community for a long, long time. And why this gives me hope is this. It's not a secret, I run grassroots campaigns, and the reason I do that is because I've been an activist all my life. Speaking out for my parents, I had to represent them before government agencies, and my parents never registered to vote except for my mom, just in time to vote in my first election. She became a naturalized citizen. But she did that, and it says to me this. We all want to build a better future for our children and generations to come. And when I see how hard it is for so many communities that I visit in California, places that you can't even imagine, in the Central Valley where there is no safe drinking water, and bottled water can't be a long-term solution. We have to do better. When I visit areas like the North State where they are so susceptible to wildfires and haven't even caught a breath after the last wildfire and they're fighting the next one. Things like this, and yet people are getting up every day and have the courage to just figure out how to make it work. That is what makes me hopeful, because it says to me, we've got the grit and tenacity to do anything we want to be successful. And I just want to, again, just pay tribute to my parents, because this is like a movie. My father came here at 14 years old, very little money. He was sponsored here by my then godfather, became a naturalized citizen after apprenticing in the laundry and dry cleaning business in San Francisco, Chinatown, by enlisting in the United States Army during World War II, and was on active duty. Became a naturalized citizen. Didn't know how to speak English, but he stood in a ditch feeding artillery through a machine gun. There was a pathway. There was a pathway. And we can establish pathways for all of our undocumented neighbors in the same way. And I'm not suggesting that they go into the military, but I am suggesting California is going to show the way in terms of what federal immigration reform looks like. We will have more state documentation to acknowledge who our neighbors are here in California, and we're going to be sure that we are recognizing everyone, every single one of our immigrants, regardless of status, in terms of their making a contribution to this great state of California. That's what gives me hope, and this is the work we will continue to do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's conclude with our next candidate, Antonio Villaraigosa. Spotlight questions. The first one is, you have built a reputation for getting things done. How have you been able to turn priorities into real outcomes for Californians?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Yes, of course. You have built a reputation for getting things done. How have you been able to turn priorities into real outcomes for Californians?
I think leadership matters. When I first ran, because I was running for such a big job, and particularly when I was speaker, everybody wanted me to be the Latino speaker. And I told people, I want to be everybody's speaker. When I ran for mayor, I did the same thing. I knew that I was breaking a glass ceiling. I knew that if I opened up that door, it would be a shot heard around the world, frankly. I remember that day. 10,000 people at my victory party. And what I said then is that the role of the first, as I said earlier, is to open up the door for the rest. That I wasn't going to declare victory, I was going to declare my purpose. When I hear some of my colleagues here talk about how they grew up, it gives me a little bit, frankly, a melancholy. I didn't grow up like that, everybody. I grew up in a home where my mother was beaten. I grew up in a home of domestic violence and alcoholism. At 15 years old, I got kicked out of school, or 16 years old, I got kicked out of school. I led the walkouts, but I also was fighting, and my grades went down. But I went to public school, and they put me in basic reading classes and basic math classes, even though I had come out of the civil rights, come out of a school that was focused on college prep. I dropped out, but I came back. And I knew when I came back that I had a responsibility. And I think I've been able to be as successful as I have been as speaker, as mayor, as a civil rights leader, because I never forgot where I came from. Because I always understood that the jobs I had were bigger than me. And you're right. When I became speaker of the California Assembly, there were a handful of Latinos, and they were almost all of them were working for us. They were working for Latinos. By the time I left, today you go there, and the vast majority, well, the majority of people are Latinos and of color. Why? Because we opened up that door. So I've been a uniter. I've been a coalition builder. I always understood, you know what? Tienes que caminar antes de correr. You got to do the small things and do them bigger over time. And that's why I think over the time that leadership matters, that character, as you said, Betty, matters, that we have to be leaders that unite us to change the paradigm in this state. And that is that the vast majority of us can't afford this state. We can't afford rent, utilities, housing, rent, and the next governor's got to focus on that. Who better to do it than someone, as you said in your question, who has a long reputation of getting things done and building coalition and bringing people together.
Can you walk us through one or two accomplishments you're the most proud of and that they have meant for working families across the state?
You know, kind of like Javier, but a little different. My father left, and I saw my mother struggle. And I saw my mother always felt bad because he actually left her even though he beat her up. And I always said I wasn't going to be my father. And I wasn't. You know, I had two daughters. I had joint custody before almost any Californian, not Latino. I had joint custody of my daughters. Both of them moved in with me. I was taking care of them, going to marches with LULAC and other organizations when they were babies. I took them with me everywhere I go. And, you know, just this Easter, you know, my kids thought, you know, I do all the holidays at the home. And my kids thought that, you know, because I'm running for governor, that I wasn't going to have an Easter party. And I said, I always have an Easter party. Every time I have a chance to bring my 3 girls, my son, my 2 grandkids, and my great-grandson together, I do. And we had a great time. We had a great time because there's nothing more important than family. I didn't have a perfect one growing up as a kid, but I always said I wasn't going to be my father, that I was never going to leave my kids. And my kids, like Natalia, have all done well. In fact, we lived not too far away from each other for a period of time, have done well. And they've done well because their father and their mother never forgot where they came from and always understood that we had to take care of them, nurture them, grow them into fine human beings. And I'm very proud that they are.
Where have Democrats failed the Latino community?
You know, let me just say this. You know, we don't have jurisdiction under, on immigration. But when I was speaker, the first thing I did is provide SSI and food stamps for legal immigrants because we had a right to do that. I did this in the 90s, okay? And when I was mayor, I understood that, yes, I'm going to be a leader for everyone. I want everyone to see a Latina, a Latino, or an Asian American who breaks those glass ceilings as everybody's leader. But I never forgot where I came from. And I knew that in the town I lived in, where we were 50% of the population, that when I focused on things like unemployment, like schools, like healthcare, I knew who was going to get impacted the most. And I'm proud that I never forgot that and that I got a record of doing that on schools, on healthcare, across the board, on everything you can think of that affects people in cities and in the state. I was there for our community and for every community, and I'm proud of that.
Yeah, one question.
Okay, perfect. Okay, one more question. Where have you stepped into bringing a real accountability and deliver results when others weren't getting it done?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, let me do it again. Where have you stepped into bringing real accountability and deliver results when others weren't getting it done?
You know, when I became mayor, I told you that on election night there were 10,000 people there. And I looked at them, and the vast majority of them looked like us. And when I realized that the vast majority of them were proud and serving me, I knew how to take on the schools. And when I took on the schools, you know the excuses I got? Oh, well, you don't understand. They're English language learners. You don't understand they're poor. You don't understand that, actually somebody told me this, that their parents don't have a credit card. And I said, you know, I understand this. You're talking about me when I was a kid. You're talking, you know, if I could learn, and I wasn't the smartest guy in the room, if I could learn, you know, go to UCLA and law school after that, our people could learn. And I fought for them. And I took on special interest frankly, you know, risk to myself politically. And I knew that. But I knew I could not leave my town and allow 1 out of 3 schools failing, a 44% graduation rate, and in our community, a 36%. So I became accountable. You know, when LA was going, everybody said LA was going bankrupt during the recession of 2009. I said, not under my watch. I took tough decisions, you know, and I had to take on my friends. But I said, we're not going bankrupt. We're going to do the right thing. And that's what leadership is. It isn't just, you know, agreeing with your friends all the time. It's sometimes taking on your friends. That's character. Character counts. Leadership counts. A record counts. And I have all 3.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have reached the conclusion of California's LULAC Governors Forum 2026. Over the last 90 minutes, we have heard individual spotlights and moderated discussions on the issues that define our daily lives, from protecting reproductive rights, expanding sanctuary protections, and making higher education affordable for the next generation.
So first, we want to thank our candidates. If you can please give them a round of applause. And our media partner, Televisa Univision, for making this high-quality production possible. But the dialogue doesn't end here. As we've shared today, the ultimate decision belongs to you. The leadership of this state is in your hands, and your power is found at the ballot box.
That's right. It's time to be heard. It's time to vote. If you found today's discussion impactful, please share this broadcast on your social media one last time so those who missed it can hear these vital perspectives. Thank you for joining us here in Monterrey, and let's go out and build the California we all want to see.
Se puede.
Sí se puede.
Se puede.
Sí se puede.
So we're closing the live stream option, but before we close, we want to share a short video that captures what's possible when our voices come together. This conversation, or this convention, has been more than conversations. It's about building a future shaped by action, leadership,